Okay, so this is my presentation for our final project. I chose to do mine on card sorting, and I picked card sorting because I feel like it was the method that we spent the least time on and that I had the most room for improvement on. So card sorting is a quick and easy way to get information from the user, and then they are easily able to articulate and categorize into recognizable sections. It primarily deals with information architecture and the way that things are arranged. It can be done online, paper, or actual cards. And then next we can talk about the history. So when I was looking into the history of card sorting, I found that it went back a lot further than I anticipated. The ancient Greeks are credited with the early development of categories, and Aristotle was the one who provided the foundations for categorization that we use today for plants and animals. Initially, printed playing cards were used for a variety of experiments, mostly in psychology. And then after this, they were joined by blank cards on which researchers could write words and then they could categorize them by subjects. They were then kind of used in memory function, imagination, and ink blots on cards. And some of these developed into what is now considered to be standard testing for neurological damage. It is used in more than just like the field of usability and psychology. It's used in criminology, market research, semantics, and social sciences. And it wasn't until the internet kind of came out in the early 90s that it started to be applied to information architecture and websites. So I found a couple videos on YouTube, and I figured that was going to be easier and more of a demonstration of how to do card sorting. So I can play that.
A user sorts out content from an application or website in a way that makes sense to them. An open card sort is when participants create their own category names for each of the groups. Here is a brief overview of an open card sort process. List each content topic on an index card before the card sort begins. Give the user the index cards. Provide blank cards in which the user can add topics or to label the groups they create. Allow the user enough time to conduct the card sort. Explain to the user the context of the card sort, which in this case is a cake delivery app. Tell the user that you are looking for category names for the content displayed in front of them. Also explain to the user that you want to see what groups of cards make sense to the user and that when they have completed the groups, they are required to name each group. Also make clear to the user that if they think any index cards don't fit within a group, they can leave aside. Ask the user to name each group when they have combined all index cards into groups. What words would they best describe each group or category within the application? Now you can see the final open card sort that the user has completed for the cake delivery app. The user wasn't sure what price his index card should be. They believe it should have been in more than one group. So, you're probably thinking, how is conducting card sorting as a usability testing tool important? Well, by identifying potential problems early in the development process, it eliminates costly production delays. It increases success for your website or application as the content is displayed in the correct format where the user expects to find it, which increases productivity and user satisfaction. Overall, provides a good user experience for the user.
So that was just a short video just to kind of show what would happen. To kind of sum it up, participants are asked to organize topics from content within the website or other interface into groups that make sense to them, and then name each group. And you can use an open card sort to learn how users group the content and what labels they're giving, so that way that when you're developing your site or your interface, it is easier and then you don't have to spend so much time working on it. Then I have a video of a closed card sort, and I edited this one down so it wasn't as long too.
So can you use the index cards and place them into the category category that best fits. If you think the category name isn't there, use a blank card on your right to best describe it. Also, if you think anything is missing within the content, use a blank card to add it to the group.
So that was just a short example of how to do the closed card sort. To summarize, their users are asked to sort topics from the content into predefined categories, and it works best when you're working with your categories that have already been set. And you want to learn how they're sorting them into each category and make sure that your kind of headings or subsections make sense. Finally, the hybrid card sort, and I looked all over and it was really hard to find an example of someone doing a hybrid card sort, so I got this video. It's, I think, like 30 seconds long, and then I can kind of talk about when you should use it and what it kind of is.
If you want to propose a structure for participants to sort items into, but you want them to come up with different names for categories and groups, then the hybrid card sort might be what you need. Hybrid card sorts are flexible and are useful if you feel confident in how you've presented and structured your content, but you want someone to sanity check the language that you've used.
So yeah, there wasn't really an example of someone doing it, but it's mostly just a mix of open and closed card sorting. And it can be most useful when there's a large group of complex information and you're not sure how to categorize it in your design process. Or if partial information architecture exists, but you're interested in seeing how the users label and sort the rest of it. It can be useful, but it could also be a little bit more challenging just because you're doing a mixture of open and closed. So some of the benefits of card sorting is that it's a simple, cheap, and fast method. It's very user-focused since you're dealing specifically with your users directly. It's one of the most well-recognized methods for usability testing. And it really is good at helping you to evaluate the information architecture of your site. And it'll really get you to understand your users' expectations in your card sorting. Some of the disadvantages are that it could ignore some of the tasks. So like when we did the first click testing and we had the scenarios and tasks, it doesn't deal with that just because you're only dealing with the information architecture. It does center around people needing to be consistent, and between each person, people think differently, and they're going to be less consistent and think differently, and therefore have different results. The analysis can be lengthy depending on which way you're doing it, either qualitative or quantitative, and it might not in the end provide enough data to help with your issues, especially if you're looking for more than just an information architecture. So if you're using a computer program, it'll be good to see if you could maybe download some of the information and do a spreadsheet. You're definitely going to want to get your data separated by qualitative and quantitative. When we did it, we used an Excel spreadsheet or something similar. I think we used the Google Sheets just because it was a little bit easier for us all to collaborate. And then you're going to want to prepare a report for your clients. A couple useful tips that I found was to limit the number of cards, and that's because you want to kind of make it so the users don't get confused and then they don't end up just placing things in random places just because they want to get done with it. If you can, to randomize the order of the presentation so that each piece of content has a chance to be sorted earlier in the session. You should always provide your users with an estimate of how long the sort will take. So that way they can kind of better gauge how much effort they're going to have to put in and how much time they can expect to spend doing it. You should also maybe consider doing a combination of 1 and 2, either starting with open card sorting and then doing a closed card sort, or you could just start and do the hybrid card sort right away. So when we did this with the StoutCloud interface, I think that this was a little bit more challenging, and this is one of the reasons that I picked it. I think it was challenging in the aspect of when we were doing it with users that are already familiar with the interface, they already knew where a lot of the categories were supposed to go. And so I don't know if they spent so much time listening to the task itself and thinking about where they would put it so much as just doing what they remembered. And I don't know if that was maybe just because we picked bad categories, but I think that maybe if we were to find a different user group, so if we were to maybe test like high school students or something who were considering going to college, or had been accepted into a college and then they would be using like this interface in the future, I think that that would have worked well. We used Optimal Sort to do our testing and it did not work well because you had like a limit of 3 for each profile that you did. And then if you messed up and you tried to come back, it wouldn't let you back in. And so we had a lot of problems. And I think I created 4 accounts in the end before I was able to get all 3 of my people to do the card sort and just download that file. If I did it again, I would definitely not use an online source, even though it was convenient and I didn't have to analyze the data by myself. It just kind of downloaded it. I would use a paper method like you suggested with Post-it notes. The real reason I didn't do that is because I was kind of being lazy about it, but I think that that would definitely work better and it would be less work in the end. And I think it would definitely be my favorite method of usability testing just because I think it provides the most structure for your site. And like we talked about yesterday in class, potentially I'd like to open my own law firm someday, and that's going to involve making a website. And I think it's going to be important to categorize information in a way that makes sense to anybody who visits the site. In conclusion, for any usability testing, you're going to want to find the best method for your clients, and whatever that means, whatever method of testing, if it's card sorting or anything else, you're going to want to find the best medium for your test, online or paper or actual cards. I would recommend to use paper just because of my experience with the online system. You want to make sure that you are able to analyze your data in a useful way, meaning that you pick the best way to analyze it, whether it's qualitative or quantitative, and then separating them between the two so that way you get the best results. And you should know that you're going to have to possibly conduct multiple types of usability tests, and that maybe a card sort will give you one part of the information that you want, but maybe not all of it. And so knowing that you might have to go in a couple times and do different kinds of testing is something that's really important. These are the references that I used. I didn't know if they were necessary for the presentation, but I figured I would include them, and then you can pause them if you want. So thank you.